This morning, what I'd like to talk a little bit about is family dynamics. And the topic and the questions that I'd like to ask are two. The first question is, how does kinship care change and impact my family? Has anybody experienced that it's kind of impacted your roles, your relationships, your responsibilities? So yeah, that first question is, how does kinship care impact and change relationships and roles? And the most important part is talking about how you can manage that and how you can help your family make those adjustments to those changes, okay? I'm going to be asking you a few questions while I'm presenting, and I just want you to feel free to respond. If it feels comfortable to you, please do so. If it's too personal, I respect your privacy, but I do want you to kind of share as well same things that have happened to you, and I'll be asking those questions of you at the same time. So let me start off with this. We've had a chance to talk with a lot of caregivers about kinship care, and we had a chance to do a lot of research. And what I've put together here is kind of what we call a genogram. It's kind of like a family map of what your families may be looking like. What the research is telling us is that usually, well, I'll ask you, from your contacts with each other, who's usually providing kinship care? What member of the family is it?
The grandparents.
The grandparents. Do I have aunts and uncles here that are doing it as well? Oh, well, this is a good proof right here. Okay. That's what we're finding. It's mostly grandparents. The other thing is that we're finding out that of which grandparent do you think is the one that's frequently involved in caring for the children? Yeah, grandmothers. Yeah, that's what we're finding out. It's grandmothers. Are these grandmothers single-headed households, or do you think they're multiple-headed households? What do you think, and what's your experience told you?
Both.
Both? Okay. What our research is saying is that for the majority of them, they're single-headed households. So they're doing everything. You know, they're doing everything from managing the house to running their children to dealing with the bills, and they're doing it as a single person. So what we're seeing are grandparents, grandmothers, single-headed households, and that's pretty much what we've gotten from you and from our interviews in terms of what that family looks like. And this is what this map shows. Grandparent, and we can put S there if you want, grandparents, the aunts, the uncles, the birth parents. What do they to each other based on this genogram? Siblings, exactly. And then from the aunt and the birth parent and from the uncle, they have children. And what's the relationship of those children to each other? Cousins, exactly. Now I have IC. That's the identified child that's going into care. So what I have here is a genogram that's showing the child going into care. And my question to you is, when you move a child, when a grandparent agrees to raise their grandchild as if they were the parent of that child, where does that child's position shift in this genogram? Up, down, over? Which? All over the place. Okay, all right. So let's see where it starts to move. But I'll be more specific though. If that grandparent is raising that child as their birth child, where do you see that position, that child's position move? Because they're raising them now as if they were one of their children. So where do you think it goes?
To the birth parent.
Okay, all right, let's see what happened. Why is it appropriate for the child to be on that position? Better yet, what does that child have in common with the aunt, the birth parent, and the uncle now?
They're all equal.
What makes them
They're all
equal?
siblings.
And the siblings?
They're being raised by that.
They're being raised by the grandma. That's exactly what they now have in common. Now, granted, aunts and uncles and the birth parents, they're certainly different and the relationships are different, but what they do have in common is that they're now being raised by the grandparent. And this grandparent is now raising that child as if it was their birth child. So, what I'd like you to do now is to kind of go back and think about what your son or your daughter said to you or reacted to you about raising that child. What'd they say to you?
A lot of animosity.
A lot of animosity.
Yeah, they weren't happy.
They weren't happy.
Are you talking about the birth parent?
Well, we'll leave the birth parent out right now, because I'm going to get to that too, okay? But what did your children say about raising?
The aunt and uncle.
Yeah, the aunt and uncle.
Okay.
Yeah, what did they say about raising that
They
child?
supported.
They were supportive. Okay.
It was mixed.
It was mixed?
It was mixed.
What was it? What was it mixed? How was it mixed?
So in our case, the birth parent has a twin sister.
Mm-hmm.
So the twin sister was in support of her sister.
Mm-hmm.
So there was some animosity there.
Okay, some
Other
animosity?
siblings were
Okay.
supportive of us.
Okay, so the support was split.
Yes.
Some was for the birth parent, and sometimes the support is for you, their parent. All right. Anybody else? What else did you experience? Yes.
I still had two at home when I brought in two.
Okay.
So it took away those years with my boys in middle and high school.
Okay.
And they had to accept it, and they didn't like it at all.
Okay. All right. So in your situation, you were still, that aunt and uncle you were still raising them
Correct.
in the family.
Yes.
And they had
Still
some,
am.
and still are, and they had some animosity. Was it jealousy or?
Jealousy, and their sisters were already grown out of the house. So
Okay.
it was their turn
Oh,
with me.
I love that.
And
Yeah, that's
it
great the
took-
way you said that. Yeah.
I got a 1.5 and 5-year-old at
Okay.
an emergency hearing.
Mhm.
And they, whether they liked it or not, and they didn't like it.
Yeah.
And they're still adjusting.
Mhm. So there's animosity. There was a
I wouldn't
little
call
bit
it
of
animosity, I would call it jealousy.
a jealousy,
And also, I work full-time and commute, and I'm the single.
and you're the single grandparent. Okay. So there's jealousy, and I like the way you said it. They felt like you were taking time away from them.
It is.
And the other thing that I thought was critical about what you said is that they felt it was their turn
It was their turn.
because other siblings had moved out.
Because I had, yes.
Exactly. Okay. Now, if you notice, there was a continuum of responses that went from support, glad you're doing it, to jealous, okay, to feeling as though you're taking time away from them. I've heard some aunts and uncles even go so far as to say, you're taking time away from who?
The grandkids,
The grandkids.
the ones you already have.
The ones you already have.
That is hard for the grandparent.
Yes.
Who's raising the child. And it's hard for the aunt and the uncle. It's hard on the grandkids.
Oh my goodness, you covered it all. She covered everybody in here. It's hard on the aunt, the uncle, the birth parent, and the grandchildren. So everyone is feeling it
Right.
because of that one decision and that one move of you caring for that child. Okay? All right, now let's go to the birth parent. What did the birth parents say to you? How do they feel about you now raising their child as if you were the parent? What'd you get? How did they respond? What'd they say?
Anger.
Anger.
That's where the animosity really,
That's where the animosity came out. Do you remember what the things that were said in anger?
I'm the mother, not you.
I'm the mother, not you.
you're taking her from me.
You're taking her from me. I'm still
I'm still her mother.
her mother. Okay. So you can get that type of response, which is that anger, kind of resentment, kind of competition. Now, you can have the other extreme too, which is thank you. I appreciate that. Okay. I'll come back. But there's a continuum of responses that the relative caregiver and that the grandparent is subject to. I want you to look at the birth parent child dyad. Do any of you know what the birth parent may have said to the child about listening to you and relating to you as their parent?
I'm always going to be your mother.
I'm always going to be your mother.
Yeah.
What else did you hear them say?
If you ever need me, call me.
If you ever need me, call me.
Yep.
Okay. Anyone else remember or heard or have some idea what was said to the birth parent? Okay.
Well, I was assaulted.
You were assaulted by your daughter? Okay. All right. So that anger was actually physical. Okay. So you can go from the extreme of thank you or to the other extreme of being assaulted or the other extreme of I'm still your parent. I'll be there. I'll be back. Okay? So again, the whole idea is that one move impacts so many different people. I think it's important that we realize that for that relative caregiver, when you move that child, it changes interactions, and it's like a system. It's like a domino effect. Everybody is affected by what happens in that change. Now, one of the things that we realize is that children don't always go into the care of grandparents. They sometimes go into the care of an aunt or an uncle. Now, this child has moved here into the care of the aunt. The child that I have identified as IC and the child that they're living with are cousins. Now, let's assume they've gone through the honeymoon period. I'm glad you're here. Thanks for coming. We're going to have fun. And now they're going to be starting to relate as what? Siblings. Okay. What might this child be saying to the IC about? I only have to finish the sentence. Right. I was here first. What else? When are you going back home? That's my mom. Can you hear the dialogue? Okay. Now, let's go one step further. What do you think that child is saying to their aunt or uncle about, which is their parent, about that child living there? What does that conversation sound like?
Could you say that again?
Yeah. What do you think this child is now saying to mom about cuz living in their home? I don't like them being here. You're letting them get away with things that you didn't let me. Why are they here? When are they leaving? So for that, again, that relative caregiver who is the aunt or uncle, and I guess I'm thinking of the young lady here who has 2 children that are already still raising, and they're living together as siblings now. There's going to be some feelings.
They're
going to be
not allowed to call me mom,
oh,
which is okay.
wow. But they did not want her,
My boys
did not want
let the
them
girls
call you
call me
mom.
mom or refer to me as mother.
Oh, okay. Let me just kind of repeat that. In that situation where they were living together as siblings, one set of siblings was saying to the child that came in not to even call you mom. Okay, so you can hear that dialogue, and then I guess they didn't want you to respond to them as mom either, I guess.
Correct.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay, all right. So my whole point is that when you move a child into kinship care, and I think you know this already, and I think any relative caregivers that are considering it or thinking about it, it's important to know that you are changing pre-existing relationships. In fact, that's what makes kinship care different from non-relative foster care and adoption. See, in non-relative foster care and adoption, the foster parent, the birth parent, and the child in care, they don't know each other. They don't have a past. You know, for you, you now have to go from being a grandparent to a parent. Those cousins now have to go from being cousins to each other to now siblings with each other. That aunt now has to go from being an aunt to the parent of a child. So what you actually have here is a changing in pre-existing relationships. There's changes in pre-existing roles, changes in responsibilities, accountability. All of a sudden, the children have to figure out who tells who what to do. There's even a change in terms of power, in terms of who is responsible for day-to-day situations. The status even changes. And that's where a lot of the birth parents have that resentment, because you now have more power than they did. Now they do over the children. You have more status.
With me, I'm not even a birth parent, these are step. So there was a little bit, I wouldn't say any disagreements, but I wasn't their father.
Yep, you're not dad. And I can even see that being thrown in your face, okay? And now you've got more power because you weren't even blood. You know, you were a step parent. So that kind of changing again in terms of power, status, and now you have more authority, and your loyalty also changes in kinship care. Let me show you another diagram. We know this one. Child goes into care, you're raising them as your child, as a sibling, but look at what else happens. Oh, I see some folks nodding. What just happened?
They became the first child.
Yeah. All of a sudden, their needs take precedent to the birth parent. So even your loyalty shifts, and there could be feelings about that. What did the birth parents, from your experience, how did the birth parent feel about your shifting in loyalty? And how did they feel about you placing the needs of the children over them? You said tough?
It's tough.
Okay. How did you know it was tough for them? What did they say or do?
Their behavior,
Mm-hmm.
you could see sadness and the crying and, you know,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm your child, this is your grandchild.
Okay, that's the Achilles heel, you see, because all of a sudden, all of a sudden they say to you, how can you do this? I'm your child. You knew me first. Because that's who your initial attachment with was first. And we're going to talk a little bit more about later in another training. But it's that shifting of loyalties where now you have to place the needs of the children over that of the birth parents. So what do you do? How do you handle all that? First thing you're going to have to do is anticipate in your family and get them to realize that these roles have changed. That has to be talked about. Who tells who what to do? Who's responsible now? Who does discipline with the children so that they'll support you? Because if you don't, you're going to have to be aware of the fact that there may be some resistance. There may be even some sabotage. There even may be some collusion among themselves as to, you don't have to listen to them. They're not your parents. And there's going to be loss. Loss in terms of that relationship, of that status with the child, of their relationship, of time spent with you as grandparents. I was working with one family where the child moved in with grandma, and I thought everything should be fine. They were coming over every weekend, and then we changed it and we set up a legal relationship, and the child began to run away. And I asked him, why are you running away? His response was, every time my cousins come over, grandma never says what to them? No. She's acting like grandma. She's not there to be a discipline. I mean, that's what I enjoy, being a grandparent. You know, I don't have to be the discipline. You know, I can blame everything on mom and dad. You know, I can say, look, I'll let you stay up all night if I could, but it's your mother and your father. I'd let you eat all you want, all the sugar. You see what I mean? And that's the enjoyment. But now, and that child was seeing her still act like grandparent. She never said no. Okay? And she caught it the other way, because guess what? The grandchildren were saying it's not fair for him to live with grandma, because living with grandma is like Christmas every day of the year. So she was catching it both ways. Okay? So the child ran away and came back, and I told, well, I shouldn't tell you my mistakes, but I'll share it with you. I told the grandmom, go back and act like a grandmom again. Did I set her up or what? Oh, somebody said, yeah. I did set her up, didn't I? Yeah, because she went back to being grandmom and spoiling and not saying no. And then it was time for the child to go to bed. And she said, okay, time to go to bed. And the child said what? No. Sounds like you've done this before, okay? Because you try to go back to be a grandparent again, right? And then she finally realized, hey, you've got to be the parent, you've got to be the disciplinarian. So it was hard for her because what did she lose? The joy of being a grandparent. And what did the child lose? The joy of having a grandparent. Okay, so that's what I'm talking about in terms of losses. And the losses, again, happen to everyone. It goes throughout. So for you as a caregiver, it's being able to see where the resistance might come from, where the collusion might come from, where you're going to have to get buy-in order to make this work, and getting the family to give you permission to change those roles, and getting the family to support your change in roles. You know, because you're going to have to get some buy-in. You're going to need that birth parent to say, when grandmom speaks, she speaks for who? Me. And you need to listen to grandmom the same way you would listen to me. You know, and you're going to have to get those other siblings to realize grandmom has to say no. You know, grandmom has to take time. Grandmom has to let him live with me because if it's not me, then where would this child go? And I would have to do the same for who else? You. So it's those kinds of discussions, that type of work that relative caregivers and grandparents have to do. So my hope is that you'll be able to look at this map, put some names in those boxes, see how people are feeling about the change. I'm turning into a therapist, aren't I? Okay. But you already do it, okay? It's good. Okay, good. Yeah, but to be able to kind of like map your family out and see how people are feeling, knowing how they're reacting, and then kind of help them adjust to those roles, yeah, that's what's going to have to make it work. And that'll help you survive, and it'll also at the same time, help you from not getting caught in the middle. So, in summary, changing that child is not just moving a child. You're changing family relationships and dynamics. Everybody's affected. What you want to do is kind of like get an idea of how people are feeling and then look at where the issues of loss may be, where the issues of resistance may come from, who you have to get buy-in from, and how to talk to people about the changing the relationships that are occurring in your family. Okay, well, thank you very much.